All right, so our next speaker is Doug Picard. Doug is a Dayton transplant of 3 years. While he enjoys, you just covered up my script when you did that. Oh, sorry. Sorry. While he enjoys running and cycling around the area, he can usually be found, according to him, in his kitchen baking up some cool stuff. This is a man, despite his slender appearance, who claims he has never met a carb he did not like. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Picard.
All right, glad everyone's bearded up. How I got into baking, as a kid, I would go to the local bakery with my grandfather, and we would come back with star bread, Portuguese rolls, French loaves. It was warm, fresh, and the best. Fast forward to 1 year ago today, and I was injured, sidelined from running, and I needed a new hobby to keep me sane. Sourdough bread is made from a culture, wild yeast plus lactobacillus bacteria. It's a good bacteria, in symbiosis with water and flour as a medium, and it makes a sour, pungent ferment similar to brewing beer. Wild yeast exists everywhere. It's even on your chair, and it's the old style of bread making. You've seen the jars and packets of yeast in the grocery store. Commercial yeast allows for baking lots of bread quickly. It's easier to store, duplicate, and market. However, the cost is the lack of rich flavors like a traditional sourdough bread will have. Unless you have days to dedicate to one loaf, commercial yeast supplements help home bread making. To make a sourdough starter, you need a container, ceramic or glass, a dry 70-ish degree location, good quality unbleached flour, water, Dayton water is the best, and time to allow the fermentation to occur. After about a week, the mixture should smell sour and be ready to go. Maintaining a countertop starter requires doubling the volume to keep a fresh supply of food for the bacteria to feed on, or else it'll spoil and smell like nail polish remover. Doubling it twice a day for 10 days will fill a swimming pool. So we just toss half and add more flour and water, so we don't do that. Storing starter at room temperature will mean you have a ready supply, and you can store it on the countertop or top of the fridge is best, right next to your cat. You could put it in the fridge, and you only feed it once a week. It's much more home friendly, so you can go on vacation, things like that, without needing a babysitter. It can also be frozen. Just smear it on a baking sheet and dry it off, put it in a container. Sometimes we lose track of starter. It might not be dead, it just needs to be revived, woken up, and be bubbly before we use it. To do this, we pour the thin layer of alcohol off and feed it for a few days. Like Church, the cat from Pet Cemetery, it might not be the same as it was before we started. Starter can be used in any recipe, pancakes, waffles, or anything that can be enhanced with a sourdough flavor. The 1-to-1 ratio makes substitutions easy, but be mindful of strong or weak sourdough flavors and whip out the calculator for proportional adjustments, or you'll be looking like Captain Jack Sparrow, not knowing what you're doing. So for bread baking ingredients, obviously you need flour, salt, and water. You can get by with just that. For sweeter breads like brioche, bagels, pretzels, Portuguese, you'll see eggs, butter, and sugar. Lots of large whole breads like ciabattas and focaccias will also have olive oil in them. And those are the fancy ones that you see at restaurants, my favorites. Bread baking tools. There's so many tools. You could buy everything for bread baking. It's a very money-sucking hobby. From top left, we have a bench scraper, a bowl scraper, instant thermometer, a baking stone, a lom, which is a razor blade on a handle, flour shaker, and a mixer. Okay. And then making a sponge, a poolish, or a biga, all different names for it. It's a pre-ferment. It's the first step of dough making. And what you do is you mix your water, starter, and your commercial yeast. You let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. It's going to get nice and foamy. And I also like to add sugar here. Do not add salt to that part because it will kill the yeast. Adding flour, mixing, and kneading. After the sponge has started to get foamy, add the rest of the dry ingredients such as flour and salt. Mix slowly to incorporate before kicking it up to higher speed, unless you like cleaning flour mess. And I tell you, cleaning flour mess really stinks. Oils and butters are usually added last. Most breads will begin to lift off the sides of the bowl when kneading is done. This is when I like to transfer my dough to the countertop and work it with my hands to make sure that it feels right. Also, you can do a window test like this picture of me. Those are my hands. They'll let you know if you have sufficiently developed gluten, and that's what keeps the bread together and not like Play-Doh. Our first rise time depends on ambient and dough temperatures, types of flour used, and takes about an hour, and it will have increased in size. After it's been done risen, you deflate the dough with your fingertips, use a bowl scraper to remove the big lump, and then you transfer it to the counter. Sizing and shaping, this is where we make the shapes of our bread, and we stop messing with it before we bake it. A boule or circular loaf is easy and requires no portioning. For smaller pieces, a bench scraper will help portion these out, and then a food scale so that we can keep uniformity. And you can keep chopping it up until you get the proper weight. I like the proof on the actual baking vessels, unless using one that is in the oven, because those are pretty hot, like a stone or Dutch oven. If you don't have a basket, a bowl lined with a lint-free cloth napkin works pretty good. Proof on feel, not on time. You should be able to poke the dough and it stays poked in. When we bake, before placing the oven, we score the loaves. That's necessary to control where the bread will split during its oven spring, where it puffs up. And we can do this ornamentally, or we can just hack and slash it. A cup of water or a quick spritz of water in the oven before it bakes will help develop a nice, shiny, and crusty crust. An instant thermometer will tell you when your bread is done. You want about 190 to 200 degrees. After that, we transfer to a cooling rack and allow it to rest for 1 hour, no less, no matter how tempted you are. The crumb inside of the bread, it needs to firm up, because if you cut it while it's hot, it's going to get gummy soon. Yes, accidents do happen. Baking is very trial and error. It's affected by variables like oven temperature mismatches, ambient temperature under-overproofing. This is why we have croutons, French toast, breadcrumbs, breaded cats. And no, that's not my cat. So what now? Ingredients. I like shopping at 2nd Street Market for ingredients. You can get different kinds of flours, obscure ingredients, and you can get it in bulk. Like I buy 50-pound sacks of flour, and I keep them in the kitchen. It's great. My wife loves it. If the baking thing does not work for you, though, I really encourage you to go out, spend that $5 on a loaf of bread. You will not regret it. It's the best stuff in the world. Thank you.